The divine hair, unveiling the hidden battle between light and darkness in parts of Seirot. Prepare to embark on a journey into the heart of Kabbalah, where even the smallest strands of divine light, Seirot, carry the weight of worlds. In the delicate balance of the parts of Seirot, we uncover a spiritual battleground, the sacred clash between the forces of holiness and the Sitra Achra. Witness how the filtering of divine energy through hair channels becomes the key to understanding mercy, judgment, and the ultimate rectification of creation. This is not just a mystical teaching, it is the very essence of the cosmic struggle that shapes our reality. Join us as we unveil the mystery behind the hidden pathways of divine light, where every strand holds the potential for redemption. Understanding Matzapots. Matzapots in Kabbalah, when discussing the parts of spiritual face or structure of Seirot, hair of Arik. We're dealing with highly abstract processes that occur within the divine emanations of Atzilut. To grasp this better, direct and reflected light. In Kabbalah, there are two kinds of light, Or Yashar, direct light, and Or Hoser, reflected light. These represent divine flows, the direct flow of divine energy, and how creation responds by sending light back upward. When the first three higher aspects of the Sephirot of 72 manifest initially in Arik, they are too intense and must depart because there are no vessels to contain them. This light cannot stay below Attic, and thus it leaves the parts of. But the reflected light, even after the departure of the direct light, remains. This process creates a residue of light that becomes what we call waste, solud, forming the Seirot, the spiritual hair. Seirot Rosh and Seirot Dikna. The hair on the head, Seirot Rosh, and the beard, Seirot Dikna, of Arik are expressions of divine contraction and extension. These hair strands symbolize channels through which lower, more manageable light flows. When the reflected light remains, but the intense light of the first three departs, the waste gathers at the skin of the head, the Rosh of Arik, and is expelled as Seirot Rosh, which holds onto a minimal amount of the divine light. Similarly, some of this light descends further into the beard, Seirot Dikna, becoming part of the 13 attributes of mercy. Matzapots. Matzapots. These names symbolize the division of divine flow in the locks of hair, side locks of Arik. The right lock is called the right Matzapots, and the left lock the left Matzapots. These locks hint at the state of diminished divine energy, without full Hasadim, which affects the entire realm of Atzilut, limiting the divine intellect, Mohin, until further divine interaction, through Mein Nukvin, elevating spiritual desires, restores balance. The name Matzapots itself comes from a replacement of the name Havaya using a pattern, Ate Bash. This symbolizes that the Mohin, divine intellect, are small and limited until Hasadim, loving kindness, fills the light. In short, the concept of Matzapots. Matzapots represents a very high-level process of divine emanation where the intense divine light is first limited, but through spiritual processes, balance, and divine mercy, attributes of the beard, are restored to the world. The Seirot hair hold this residue of the divine flow, preparing it for transformation into more manageable light, which will eventually help us move toward the rectification of creation. The concept of Seirot, hair in Kabbalah, may seem unusual at first glance, but it is a profound symbol of how the divine light is processed, filtered, and limited as it flows down from the higher worlds. Understanding parts of Seirot, the structure of the spiritual hair, helps us to grasp how the infinite light of Hashem is made accessible to the created worlds. What is parts of Seirot? In Kabbalah, the parts of him, spiritual faces or configurations, are channels through which the divine light flows into creation. These parts of him represent various stages of divine contraction and expansion. One of the key ways in which the divine light becomes manageable is through Seirot, spiritual hair. Seirot symbolize the leftover diminished light that cannot be contained in the higher levels of divine emanation. When the light is too intense for a given level, it is filtered out in the form of Seirot. This filtering process takes place in the parts of him, particularly in the parts of known as Arik AA, which represents the highest level of divine compassion and long-suffering. Erech Apayim. How does the light manifest in Seirot? Direct and reflected light, the infinite light of Hashem, or Ein Sof, flows directly, or Yashar, into the parts of him. But this light is too powerful for the vessels of creation to handle. Thus it is reflected, or choser, back upward. Some of this light remains behind in the form of spiritual waste or residue, which is symbolized by the Seirot. Seirot Rosh, head hair, and Seirot Dikna, beard hair. The hair of the head, Seirot Rosh, is the first to form. It represents the leftover light from the highest aspect of divine intellect, Mochin. This light is too intense to be fully absorbed, so it is expelled as hair that clings to the surface of the parts of. The hair of the beard, Se'ara Dikna, descends further and represents the light that flows down through the attributes of divine mercy. In Kabbalistic terms, these are known as the 13 attributes of mercy, which act as channels through which Hashem's compassion flows into the world. Spiritual meaning of Seirot in the human body. Hair is produced from the skin, where blood, the life force, is converted into something less vital. In a similar way, in the spiritual worlds, Se'arot represent a filtering or reduction of the divine life force. The light that is too intense for the vessels becomes hair, an external and diminished expression of the original energy. This filtering process allows the light to be accessible without overwhelming the lower worlds. Without this contraction, the divine light would be too intense for any creation to handle. Seirot in the divine mercy. The Seirot Dikna, beard hair, in particular, is associated with the attributes of mercy. When the divine light is channeled through the beard, it is in a state of compassion and grace. The Zohar and other Kabbalistic texts often describe the beard of AA as embodying the 13 attributes of mercy, Shema 34, 6 and 7, which are invoked to bring healing and forgiveness to the world. When we speak of parts of Seirot, we are describing the way that the infinite light of Hashem is carefully channeled and filtered so that it can be revealed in creation in a way that brings life and sustenance, rather than overwhelming everything with its intensity. In summary, parts of Seirot represents the spiritual mechanism by which Hashem's light is filtered down to lower levels of creation. The hair serves as a metaphor for how this light, too powerful in its original form, is reduced and channeled into the attributes of mercy and other divine qualities. Understanding the role of Seirot helps us appreciate the delicate balance in the way Hashem reveals himself to creation, always compassionate, always mindful of our limitations. And now to the other side's role in the system of hairs. In Kabbalistic thought, the other side, Sitra Achra, refers to the forces of impurity or negativity that exist in the world, acting as a counterbalance to holiness. Understanding how the Sitra Achra interacts with the parts of Seirot gives us insight into the spiritual dynamics of how holiness can be filtered, diminished, and sometimes even exploited by negative forces. The role of the other side in Seirot, the Seirot, spiritual hair, symbolizes the residue of divine light that has been diminished or filtered through contraction, Tzimtzum. This light, which could not be fully absorbed by the higher levels of divine emanation, becomes a type of waste that clings to the surface of the parts of. While this leftover light has a diminished status, it is still connected to holiness, as it represents divine energy that has been filtered but not lost. Here is where the other side can become involved, vulnerability of diminished light. Because Seirot represent a reduced form of divine light, they are seen as more vulnerable to attack or influence from the Sitra Achra. The light that clings to the outer layers of the parts of is no longer in a pure, internalized state. It is external, and thus the forces of impurity can more easily attach themselves to it. Clinging to the external aspects, the Sitra Achra thrives by drawing vitality from holiness. However, it can only grasp what is external and diminished. The spiritual hair, Seirot, serves as a prime example of this, because it is the waste product of divine light and clings to the outer aspects of the parts of. It provides an opportunity for the Sitra Achra to latch onto holiness indirectly. This dynamic is hinted at in the Zohar and other mystical texts, which describe how the other side feeds off the externalities of divine light, judgment and severity. In Seirot, Seirot are often associated with divine din, judgment, and Gevurah, severity. The reflected light that forms Seirot is considered a product of judgment, since it is light that was rejected or expelled due to its inability to be internalized. This connection to judgment makes the Seirot particularly sensitive to the influence of the Sitra Achra, which draws strength from Gevurah, and uses it to bring strictness, harshness, or suffering into the world. Balance between holiness and the other side. While the Sitra Achra can latch onto the Seirot, it is important to understand that the divine system always maintains a balance. The Seirot themselves, even though they are diminished and external, still represent divine energy and are part of the system of rectification and divine mercy. The influence of the Sitra Achra is always limited to what is external, and the ultimate plan of Hashem ensures that holiness will eventually overcome any temporary involvement of impurity. Spiritual interpretation, the battle over leftover light. The involvement of the Sitra Achra in parts of Seirot symbolizes the spiritual battle between holiness and impurity. The Seirot reflect a delicate aspect of divine light that, although diminished, still carries potential for holiness or impurity. The fact that impurity can cling to this leftover light teaches us that even when divine light seems distant or diminished, it still holds immense power and importance. It is through the process of purification and returning this light to holiness that creation moves toward rectification, tikkun. The other side interacts with the parts of Seirot by trying to draw energy from the external diminished light. However, this influence is always limited to the external aspects, and it never truly overpowers the holiness within. The Seirot, as symbols of filtered divine light, highlight how holiness can be shielded and protected, even when it is vulnerable to external forces. This balance between holiness and impurity is part of the greater spiritual dynamic that drives the process of rectification and divine mercy in the world. To dive deeper into the involvement of the Sitra Achra in the parts of Seirot, we must understand the spiritual framework in which this opposition occurs. Diminished light in the realm of judgment. In Kabbalah, Her Seirot is closely tied to the concept of din, judgment, and Gevurah, severity, as the energy represented by the Seirot is a product of divine contraction, Tzimtzum. This light is inherently reduced and exists on the outer edges of the divine structure. Because it has been pushed outward, it becomes more susceptible to influence from the Sitra Achra, which always seeks to draw nourishment from leftover, unguarded divine energy. This makes the Seirot a critical zone of vulnerability, where the balance of holiness can be disrupted if the forces of impurity manage to attach themselves. Judgment without balance invites harshness, a space where the Sitra Achra can take hold, particularly when divine mercy is not yet fully revealed. The role of Seirot in spiritual rectification. While the Sitra Achra seeks to gain strength from these external aspects, the parts of Seirot remains an essential component in rectifying and channeling divine energy. The Seirot Rosh, hair on the head, and Seirot Dikna, beard hair, signify how the divine light is segmented, processed, and eventually restored to a state of equilibrium through divine mercy and kindness. The Seirot of the beard, corresponding to the 13 attributes of mercy, have the power to counteract the grasp of the Sitra Achra, ensuring that the divine flow returns to balance. At moments of gadlut, spiritual expansion, the Seirot transform, and the hold of the Sitra Achra is weakened, allowing the full illumination of Chochma and Bina, wisdom and understanding, to flow back into the parts of a spiritual battle, the other side's temporary influence. The deeper message here is that the involvement of the Sitra Achra in the Seirot is temporary and necessary. It represents the test of concealment. When the divine light is hidden or reduced, there is an opportunity for impurity to cling to the fringes of holiness. However, this is all part of a greater system, one where the eventual revelation of mercy, chesed, and balance restores everything to a state of higher divine connection. By understanding the Seirot in this way, we see how even diminished light serves a higher purpose. It is part of the journey of transforming darkness into light, impurity into purity, and judgment into compassion. As we close this profound journey through the mystical realms of parts of Seirot and the delicate interplay between light and darkness, We are reminded that even in the most concealed and diminished forms of divine energy, there lies immense potential for transformation and redemption. The path of spiritual rectification is never far from us. Through the wisdom of the Kabbalists, we are shown how the divine light returns even from the edges to illuminate the world with mercy, compassion, and awe. The forces of opposition may cling to the external, but holiness at its core always prevails. May we all draw strength from these teachings and strive to balance the energies of judgment and kindness in our lives, understanding that the ultimate purpose of concealment is to reveal an even greater light. This video was inspired by the timeless teachings of the Baruch HaShem and the deep transformative insights of Rabbi Yira Ha'ari, whose works continue to guide us toward deeper understanding of the hidden aspects of creation. Special recognition to the collective 131, whose dedication to spreading divine wisdom helps bring the secrets of Kabbalah into the hearts of truth seekers everywhere. Thank you for joining us on this journey of awe and wisdom. Let us continue to walk in the light of Hashem, embracing the balance of His divine attributes in everything we do. Shalom, and may you ascend ever higher in your search for truth. To understand more and to gaze at the infinite garments of the Endless One, blessed be He, go to the YouTube channel Restoration of the Breach. You will know that it is a place of the Lord our God. Carry blesses, carry the light, so even darkness will be lit.